So I'm talking to someone who's a part of a husband-wife team.
Yes, we are team truck drivers. Uh, we go all over the United States, from Florida to Spokane, Washington, and many places in between. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, wow. So how long have you been doing that?
We've been teaming now about 6 months. It's been
Okay.
about 6 months now. Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm a retired teacher. And I'm going to be honest, it is so exciting to hear this because some of my students used to say that they wanted to be a husband wife truck driving team.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I
That's
thought
all.
that was really exciting.
It is. It's a great experience. I would say, we've been together for 28 years.
Okay.
Um, so I don't know if that necessarily makes it easier for us, because I've heard a lot of people say that they would never, drive with their spouse, and they've tried it before, and I don't know if they were together for a shorter period, because it does require a lot. You know, it
Mhm.
does require a lot. Not really, because does it require a lot, baby? She's here. She's right here.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe for the woman, because you know how us men are. We kind of leave to make the mess and do everything, and then leave the woman to kind of pick up the pieces a little bit. So, but she handles it well.
Wow. 28 years. So
28 years.
well, I'm going to tell you, we'll talk about my book, whatever you want to talk about first. And then, so I have a podcast, The Aethra Bodie Show,
Okay.
conversations about unconventional and complex domestic relationships. So in the book, we have an 8515 support group, and that is actually a real life support group, but it's very closed and very, very private. So the
Uh-huh.
ladies, once a month, they entertain letters and they respond to it, and that's what my
Hmm.
podcast is based on. So you get a chance to respond to two letters today
Okay.
and,
All
and
right.
get your input on it.
All right. I'm ready.
Okay.
Yeah. Are we doing that now?
Oh, well, we can. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. I was born ready.
This one is entitled Wanting Her to Trust Me Again. It
Okay.
says, Dear Aetherian Group, how can I help my wife trust me again? I cheated on her and my mistress had a baby. That was 9 years ago. My wife refused to let my son come over, so I visit him at his grandmother's house. Sometimes his mom is there. She has not married. My wife believes that my ex mistress and I still have something going on because she has never married. The woman is very athletic and attractive. She is smart and has a great job. She likes to travel and takes good care of my son. She doesn't ask for child support because she knew me and my wife were struggling back when. She will help pay the bills from time to time. I have not given my wife any reason to think I am still cheating on her. I do, however, she does, however, ask me things, and I have given her passwords to my computer and phone so she'll have access to everything. Nothing is seeming to ease her mind. Some days I want to leave her because of the constant nagging, but stay for my daughters. However, the older the girls get, the less I feel like staying. Is there anything I can do to get this woman to trust me again? And what is a man supposed to do in a situation like this?
And that's a great question. I actually pose the same question. Once someone cheats, can the relationship go back to the way that it was? I think that after you violated someone's trust, there is no way to go back. There is no going back. There will be no way um that you can fully repair the damage that's done. It's already done. And so I think that what he has to do is he has to live with the consequences of the actions and choices that he made. He has to, with the nagging, he's talking about the nagging and all of that going through the phone and pat. He has to deal with that. That's the consequence of those actions, of that trust that you lost. You know what I mean? And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's unfair, because to create that situation and then turn around and say, that you want to leave her because she's doing that. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? That's I don't know. But I don't know if you really. I don't know if he necessarily really loves her, and maybe that's a deeper issue. Does he really love his wife? Or
Mm-hmm.
are you there now exclusively for the kids? You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And I think that would be the deeper question. But I don't think there's a way to there's no way to gain that trust. That's my personal opinion. But
What One of the things that I wondered is the fact that he mentioned he has daughters with his wife and he
right,
doesn't have a son. So
mm,
I'm wondering if the wife is feeling insecure because she hasn't had a son. I'm wondering if the wife is feeling insecure. I'm wondering if the wife is feeling insecure because she has daughters and doesn't have a son. And
mm,
he's visiting his son.
right,
And so I've wondered if how I've asked myself, how would I feel if my husband had a kid with someone else?
right,
Would I be able to handle that? Now, I'm going to tell you, my dad did had children with other women when he and my mom were married.
mm,
And that wasn't the main reason why my mom left him because, we're talking about things that happened in the 60s and 70s. Infidelity was looked at a little bit differently back then than it is now. But I
mm.
wonder, present day, being that life is a little bit different, how how does this wife get over this? Because I'm wondering if it's the fact that it is the child and he's coming in contact with this attractive woman. Like, I
Mhm.
think it's mental distress. So, how do you see it possibly?
Well, I think all of those things may be a factor. I don't necessarily know about the son being a factor because children it's all about legacy. So
Mm-hmm.
whether you have daughters or you have sons, you still have a legacy,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I don't know if that's necessarily a factor.
Okay.
Um, as far as the woman being attractive and having a good job and things like this, of course, that would be a concern,
Mm-hmm.
because you already made the choice to be with this person, you know, and you had a child with this person. So of course you're gonna always. I don't know if she will ever come to terms with even the connection that they have together. The fact that he has to go over to the grandmother's house because I think you mentioned that the son doesn't come over. He
Right.
has to go visit over there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. With that, I think that would create an issue too, because even though you have those two households and those women aren't communicating, I think that it would be easier for her if she starts to communicate with the other mother
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe even allow the visits of the son at home. You know what I mean? Because I think it would be easier for her to gauge what is actually transpiring between the two, her husband and this other woman. And I think that maybe it would make her more comfortable. That
I think you're right. You hit on to something because I can understand where maybe looking at the child is causing the wife pain. But I think she may need to walk, if she's going to make her marriage work, I think she might have to take that pain face to face by
right,
letting the son come to the house and start rebuilding trust that way. I didn't think about that until you mentioned that because she's going to have to face this pain head on instead of maybe in a way by her not allowing the kid to come over, she's hiding that, but she
right,
needs to face it. And if
right,
if that means facing the kid, looking at the kid, getting to know the kid, that may help her.
right,
That may be their pathway through. It's a difficult pathway, but that's probably the only way that this marriage is going to heal.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense to me.
I didn't think about that until you mentioned, letting the son come over because, and I know he is going to represent pain,
Yeah.
but the wife has decided she wants to be with her husband. So being with her husband means she's got to work through this pain and work on establishing trust.
Excuse me.
And he's going to have to work on establishing trust because I guess what it is in the back of her mind, she never knows when her husband goes to visit the son whether or not the mom is going to be there, whether or
Right.
not they're talking to each other. But
Exactly.
she can decrease her mental stress by saying, I'm going to let him come over.
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
Okay. Here's the second letter.
Okay.
Dear A3N group, my fiance and I have two children, 2 and 6. Sex has been sex has not been what it used to be since we moved in with my parents 6 months ago. My fiance says it's because she feels like people are listening to what we are doing. I can't ask my parents and sister to leave the house because she wants privacy. I can't afford to go to a hotel because we moved in with my parents to save money so we can get situated to buy a house. We live paycheck to paycheck and pay my parents $750 a month. After paying all the other bills and the daycare bill, that only leaves us with $1,400 to save for a house. We want to be out of here by the end of the year. Do you have any suggestions on what we can do to improve our sex life? I'm trying my best to not cheat on her, but it's getting really hard. He signed this, a man trying to do the right thing.
Huh. Um. Well. Yeah. I mean, let me say, I would go back, to when we were younger. Um,
Mhm.
there was a time when, in our teens, maybe, where we would find very innovative and creative places to, uh, enjoy ourselves. There's always parks. Um, there's always a vehicle. I mean, you can still use a vehicle, I think, nowadays. Um, there are other ways that you can work around that. Um, I don't know if he's even mentioned that, or is he looking for an excuse to go out and do something else? Because I don't think it's that hard. You know what I mean? To come up with something that to solve that particular issue or problem. Sounds to me like he wants to kind of go out and do something else. That's my opinion
But
anyway.
you said something, though, that really sounds exciting. And that is sometimes you do need to return back to your youth because you
Yeah,
think about it. That could be something that creates that spark. And they could possibly, you know, back in the day, when teenagers would slip out of
yeah,
the house
yeah.
when the parents were asleep. So
Okay.
they could put the kids to bed, right? And the grandparents can be listening out. And so
Yeah.
they don't have to worry about a babysitter. They could just slip out, like you said, and go to Lover's Lane. That's what they used to be
Lover's Lane.
called.
Yep. You remember. Yeah.
They just and they didn't say how old they are, but they can bring some excitement back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. But you say he may want to cheat anyway. You say that might be a
Yeah.
possibility.
I think that may be a possibility. I think he may be looking for an excuse.
Okay.
Um, I don't know, but that. Because I don't think that I think that I would have thought of that myself. Like, hey, we can go out here and whatever. Um, but maybe he's just not that as genius as I am.
Wow, but that I didn't think about maybe he just wanted to cheat anyway.
Yeah.
When I'm looking at this, I don't know if I'm looking at some of these letters naively, but I didn't think, well, maybe he wanted to cheat anyway.
Right.
But I was admiring them for saying they were going to stick to their budget. Like we're
Right. Yeah.
planning to be out by the end of the year. We're not going to touch this. But I thought maybe once in a while, maybe you need to take $100 or so
To
and
get a room.
to get a room.
Right. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
might be something that they may need to do, you know.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I like that Lover's Lane idea. I'm telling you, that kind of reminded me of, like when we were growing up,
Well,
when we first started dating. You're
yeah.
probably like I am because I see your gray hair like I see my gray hair, and you know how parents were
Where do you
pretty
see some
strict.
gray at?
Right
No,
up in here.
and I'm
You
joking.
know,
No. Yeah.
parents were pretty strict, and so we had to be creative, you know, and that is something to think about. Going to a park, there's a way that you can work on the relationship, and I
Definitely.
I do think that he doesn't need to get himself in a situation, because if
No.
you have a family, you've got to think of every possible way to keep your family together,
Definitely.
every
Definitely. Yeah.
possible way. Yes.
Excuse me. Sorry.
But do you have any advice with 28 years of marital experience now? I am on my second marriage. My
Mm.
first marriage lasted, let's see, my divorce was a few months shy of our 19th anniversary. So we lived together, I want to say about 14 or 15 years.
Mm.
No, about 15 or 16 years. Um, Tried the best I could, but it takes two. And to be honest, and my new husband, he's a wonderful guy. Okay, he really is a wonderful guy. We grew up in the same neighborhood, played childhood sports together. Never saw him that way, but he said to me he always liked me, but I never knew.
Okay.
He's 4 years older than I am. I never knew, but when he went through his divorce, I was single. So he's one of my best friends' husband is one of his best friends. So he was
Um,
like, "Hey, she's down the street from us and she's single. So you better find your way in there, man, before somebody else gets in
right.
there."
Yeah.
But what advice do you give for people who are on the cusp and saying, I want to make it work? Because for 28 years, you've managed to navigate through difficult times. And it takes both, it takes the man and the woman. It can't be one. So, what advice do you have to say, hey, these are the things you need to do to make it work?
Um, let me say first, I don't know if that's necessarily true. I don't know if it requires if it requires both. Because if it, I say that because from my experience, my wife is definitely my better half. She is what holds us together. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Um, and I know I put in effort and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, she is what makes it work. That's that that's what I would have to say. She makes it work. And I think that even when you mentioned it earlier, I think you were mentioning your was it your mother and father or
Hmm.
your grandmother, right? They were in a different time, right?
Hmm.
And you said, well, maybe infidelity and stuff was looked at differently.
Yes.
But even during that time, I believe that the women were the better half. If,
Hmm.
if if you understand what I'm saying, they were the better half, and so they were holding it together, and they were making it work. And because um, sometimes men go have a long learning curve. I think. No,
Really?
I'm losing you. I'm losing. Or maybe men go through crisis, midlife crisis. There are things men are even though men are supposed to be logical and stuff like that, men are very emotional at the end of the day. They are. And women are much stronger uh, much better at dealing with emotions than men are, and I think maybe because we tend to be more logical, those emotions we don't really ever really deal with those emotions. So at sometimes we go through different phases. Whatever. What I'm trying to say is that it's the woman that's going to make it work usually, and the man is going finally going to come around, and then that's what's going to make it work.
Now, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm a divorced woman,
Uh huh.
and I did the best I could to hold it together.
Uh huh.
So here's the thing, okay? My divorce was final in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
But to give credit to what you said, um, I had left one time for a year and went back. So I
Okay.
thought, going back, things would be better because, the men in my family, they talked to me and they said, look, you know, try, go back. We don't like to see you and the children like this. So go back and try and make it work. So I went back. Now I stayed almost 3 years. And when I left the second time, the men in my family said, we're not going to ask you to go back this time
Uh huh.
because in order for you to have left, it had to be worse than it was when you left the
Before.
first time.
Okay. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What made you leave the first time?
Well,
If you
yeah. So I'm going to tell you, there was abuse.
there was abuse.
There was abuse. And see, I
Sorry to hear
didn't
that.
like, I would talk to my uncle. See, my dad wasn't necessarily in the space because my dad had been married, remarried, was living in another town, but his brothers were there for us.
Uh-huh.
And so when I would talk to my uncles, they would give me the male perspective, what he might be going through.
Right.
So I respected what they said. It was their advice and their encouragement and them helping me to understand what he might be going through as a man. The reason why I stayed as long as I did anyway, but I never told them about the abuse. Now, I would say, we would argue and stuff like that, but I never told them about the physical abuse. So,
Right.
he would come home and depending on how much money he made, he just wanted to just be a terror.
Mm.
Now, I'm not going to lie, I fought back. I did.
You supposed to.
And well, and I called the cops a few times.
You're
I
supposed to.
mean, and so, but he told me after we were divorced, after I felt like I gave him what he wanted, he sent me an email and he said, I just want you to know that I stopped working on the marriage in 2004.
Mm.
So I said to him, so now if you're going to spend 8 years of your life in misery, you should have left. Free yourself. Like I thought I did him a favor, but now when you said men are emotional, I,
Uh-huh.
I can see that emotion. Like I stand back in hindsight, I see that emotion. Watching my son grow up has helped me understand men because I had a chance to watch him grow into a man, see certain things that are masculine. But what is a person supposed to do when one person has checked out? Because he told me, that's why I was doing all the things I was doing because I checked out.
Yeah. See that's something I don't think that any person should have to deal with abuse. Period. You know. No. Yeah. I wasn't. Yeah, that's not something that you stay around. You know what I mean? There are too many instances where people lose their lives. Staying. When there's abuse, domestic abuse going on. Um. So I commend you for being strong, but I'm glad you made it out of that situation. You know,
Well,
happy that you did that.
and I'm going to be honest, like when my daughter said to me, you stayed too long, mom. Like you really stayed too long. You stayed longer than you should have. And those are some things that I'm dealing with now in my adulthood. Like these are some things, and I don't think, we try our best, but I'm still healing from the fact that she has told me you stayed too long, you know, because those are some things I don't think that we always think about. And I've gone over and over in my mind, what could I have done differently? And on the only thing I knew to do was to be the type of wife that my uncles always told us we needed to be. So, when you come home from work, have your house settled, because men have a lot to deal with going out into the world. And then as a black man, it's even harder. So when he
Right.
comes home, his home needs to be his castle. So that's what I tried to do. Home cooked meals, garden from time to time, like all of those things they told me they valued were some of the things that my ex-husband told me that he didn't value.
Mm.
And so,
Oh,
that was a learning curve for me as well.
right.
Like, how do we come together to make some things happen? So, I realized that I wasn't the type of woman he needed, which was, the reason why the second time I said, let me just free us both. Give
Right.
him the freedom to find the person that is right for him, because it's not me. And I don't want, my kids to see this. And, and a lot of times research says that men won't leave, that men will do things to make the woman leave, kind of thing. But, how can a person navigate through this type of thing?
Um, that's a difficult. Um, I may have to come back on and answer that one. I want to give that one some thought before I say something on that one.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
this is something else too, that my uncles, my parents, back in the day, old people used to always talk about being equally yoked. And what I realized is that if you really have to be equally yoked. Like, people have to understand, and you have to think about like that yoke that's around the was it the oxen that they were
Yeah.
talking about, neck.
Yeah.
And they both have to go in that same direction. And that's one way that I understood it. And now, even when couples come to me, and even like, I'm a minister, so when my husband and I, we counsel people, we do talk about what is your shared vision,
Right.
what are your shared goals, like, what how do you see yourself 10 years from now, and what role do you play, and what role does he play or she play. So if you don't mind, talk to us a little bit about, because you and your wife, you are a successful driving team. And I'm going to be honest, when you told me that, it was really exciting, because when I'm talking to like my students and my clients, I can share this couple who's been married for 28 years. They are a husband and wife driving team. Like, to me, that's exciting, because when you're on the road together, that's a way for you to even strengthen your marriage, because you're building more trust there.
Right.
So, talk to us about being equally yoked.
Um, Being equally yoked, like you said, it means having a shared vision. Um, and I think it also refers to being, of the same, having the same perspective on life. Like,
Okay.
neither I or my wife drink. We don't really party. Go out to clubs or anything, or because it would be different if I was a homebody and she was in the clubs. You
Mm-hmm.
know, even as far as our spending, we're pretty much uh, you know equally yoked. Of the same mind and the same body. We move, that's we're gonna move together. So you and especially when you're talking about being equally yoked, you have to, imagine being with someone 24/7, 365. That's essentially our life. We are together every day, all the time. Yeah, but yeah, and she's going to be. We're working on a show now as far as trucking called. I believe it's. I'm not going to mention it, but we are working on the show too.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so we just stay focused on our goals. We try to have business meetings, family meetings to make sure that we're meeting our objectives. And things like that. Um,
You said something when you say family meetings and business meetings, because I tell people that a family unit also has that business component
yes,
because you have to make sure that the bills are paid.
right.
And then your family time, you've got to make sure that we as a family unit are headed in the right direction. So how do you marry those two together?
Another good question. You're great with these questions. I'm gonna answer this one, and then we can maybe continue another time. I got to get prepared for another one that I'm gonna be doing here shortly. All right.
Okay.
All right. As far as marrying those two together, another excellent question. Um, we look at it because we are entrepreneurs as well.
Uh-huh.
So for us, it's not only about like the bills. The bills is more as part of the family, but our business is, if we're creating content, we want to have an online store. We're landlords. We have property, so we have to be, worry about those things. And so we have to sit down and look at our budget and our finances from our personal life as a family, and then, once we understand that, because I think that's where it starts, then we look at the business end of things and we say, okay, this is what we have to do as far as, the house or, if we want to do this, get this online store going, et cetera. So yeah, we definitely look at the home first, the family, personal, and then we look at the business and then we put them together.
Okay. Well, I'm going to thank you so much. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
you. And my podcast is really about healing. How can we heal? How can we keep families together? Sometimes divorce has to happen, but if we can prevent divorce, it is better if we don't have it. Sometimes it happens and we have to move on, but it's all about trying to keep people together.
I agree. I agree. Thanks for having me on. I hope that I can still get you to come on and talk about your book.
Okay.
We may have to do it on your platform here, the Zoom.
Okay.
But I would still like to have that conversation if you don't mind.
Okay. No problem. Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a
Okay.
wonderful day.
You too. Bye.